Billionaire took his girlfriend to an old house to test her love. Her reaction shocked him. The old house stood alone at the edge of a forgotten road, its cracked walls swallowed by vines and silence. Broken windows stared into the fading evening like empty eyes. It looked like a place no one would willingly enter, but for billionaire Ethan Carter, it was the perfect place to uncover the truth. For months, he had wondered if the woman he loved truly loved him, or the luxurious life she believed he could give her. Every expensive dinner, every lavish vacation, every designer gift left one question burning in his heart: would she still choose me if I had nothing? So, without revealing his plan, Ethan drove his girlfriend to the abandoned property and calmly told her the shocking lie. "I've lost everything, my company is gone, my accounts are frozen. This old house is all I have left." He waited for the tears, the anger, the disappointment, perhaps even the moment she would walk away forever. Instead, what happened next left him completely speechless. She slowly stepped out of the car, looked around the neglected house and smiled. Then she reached for his trembling hand. "If this is all we have," she whispered, "then we'll rebuild it together. A house can be repaired, money can be earned again, but real love is something most rich people spend their whole lives searching for." What she did over the next few minutes stunned Ethan even more. She rolled up her sleeves, walked through the broken doorway without hesitation, and began planning how they could turn the abandoned house into a home. At that moment, Ethan realized he hadn't been testing her love. She had just revealed the kind of heart that no amount of money could ever buy. But what happened after he finally confessed the truth changed both of their lives forever. The old house stood alone at the edge of a forgotten road, its cracked walls swallowed by vines and silence. Broken windows stared into the fading evening like empty eyes. It looked like a place no one would willingly enter, but for billionaire Ethan Carter, it was the perfect place to uncover the truth. For months, he had wondered if the woman he loved truly loved him, or the luxurious life she believed he could give her. Every expensive dinner, every lavish vacation, every designer gift left one question burning in his heart: would she still choose me if I had nothing? So, without revealing his plan, Ethan drove his girlfriend to the abandoned property and calmly told her the shocking lie. "I've lost everything, my company is gone, my accounts are frozen. This old house is all I have left." He waited for the tears, the anger, the disappointment, perhaps even the moment she would walk away forever. Instead, what happened next left him completely speechless. She slowly stepped out of the car, looked around the neglected house and smiled. Then she reached for his trembling hand. "If this is all we have," she whispered, "then we'll rebuild it together. A house can be repaired, money can be earned again, but real love is something most rich people spend their whole lives searching for." What she did over the next few minutes stunned Ethan even more. She rolled up her sleeves, walked through the broken doorway without hesitation, and began planning how they could turn the abandoned house into a home. At that moment, Ethan realized he hadn't been testing her love. She had just revealed the kind of heart that no amount of money could ever buy. But what happened after he finally confessed the truth changed both of their lives forever. Ethan remained frozen outside the weathered doorway, watching Claire brush years of dust from an old wooden table as if she were preparing a dining room instead of standing inside a forgotten ruin. She didn't complain. She didn't ask about the missing fortune. She didn't even question how a billionaire could lose everything overnight. Instead, she noticed a broken window letting in the cold evening breeze. "We'll need plywood for that," she said thoughtfully. "And the roof looks like it leaks over there. We'll fix one room first. We don't have to do everything at once." Ethan stared at her in disbelief. Was this real? Every financial advisor, every executive friend, and even his own mother had warned him that women were only interested in his wealth. After his previous engagement collapsed the moment his fiancée thought one of his investments had failed, Ethan had promised himself he would never marry until he was certain. Claire was now challenging everything he believed. She wandered into what had once been a kitchen. The rusty sink barely hung from the wall. Cabinets had collapsed onto the floor. A family of birds had made a nest in one corner. Yet she smiled. "I've seen worse," she laughed softly. When I was 12, my mom and I lived in an apartment where rain came through the ceiling every storm. We survived that. This doesn't scare me. Ethan's chest tightened. For the first time since becoming one of the youngest billionaires in America, he felt ashamed, not of losing money, but of doubting someone who had done nothing but love him sincerely. Just as he opened his mouth to tell her the truth, his phone vibrated. It was his chief of security. The screen displayed only 3 urgent words. "Don't tell her." Ethan frowned. A second message appeared seconds later. "Someone has been following you since noon. Leave immediately." The warmth inside the abandoned house suddenly vanished. Ethan slowly turned toward the broken front window. Outside, a black SUV had just pulled onto the deserted road. The black SUV rolled to a slow stop about 50 yards from the abandoned house. Its headlights remained off. The engine continued to idle. No one stepped out. Ethan's heartbeat quickened. His chief of security, Marcus Hale, was not a man who panicked. A former military intelligence officer, Marcus never sent vague warnings unless he believed the danger was real. Claire noticed the expression on Ethan's face. "What's wrong?" He slipped the phone into his pocket before she could see the messages. "Nothing," he answered, forcing a smile. "I just remembered I forgot to cancel a meeting." She studied him for a moment. She had always been able to read him better than anyone else. "You're a terrible liar." Before Ethan could respond, the driver's door of the SUV slowly opened. A tall man in a dark jacket stepped out and looked toward the house. He didn't move. He simply stood there, watching. Claire instinctively moved closer to Ethan. "Do you know him?" Ethan shook his head, though deep inside he feared he already knew who might be behind this. 3 months earlier, his company had quietly outbid one of the country's most ruthless business magnates for a multi-billion-dollar redevelopment project. The deal had cost the rival businessman hundreds of millions of dollars and destroyed years of planning. The man had smiled during the final meeting, but his eyes had promised revenge. Marcus had increased Ethan's security ever since. Until today. Today, Ethan had deliberately dismissed his security team so he could carry out his little love test without anyone interfering. Now he realized how reckless that decision had been. The stranger finally began walking toward the house. His footsteps crunched against the gravel road with slow, deliberate confidence. Claire glanced around. There isn't another house for miles. Her voice was calm, but Ethan could hear the concern beneath it. "Maybe we should leave." He nodded. "I think you're right." They turned toward the car parked beside the abandoned home. Then Ethan stopped. The front passenger tire was completely flat. So was the rear tire. He hurried around the vehicle. Every single tire had been slashed. Claire gasped. "Someone did this while we were inside." Ethan's pulse raced. This wasn't random vandalism. Someone wanted to make sure they couldn't leave. The stranger continued approaching, now only 30 yards away. Before Ethan could react, his phone rang again. "Marcus." He answered immediately. "Where are you?" Marcus demanded. "Still at the house. I told you to leave." "I can't, the tires have been cut." There was a brief silence before Marcus spoke again, his voice lower than before. "Listen carefully, that abandoned house belonged to your grandfather." Ethan froze. "What?" "He secretly transferred the property into your name years ago." "I never knew that." "I know, he wanted no one to know." Marcus hesitated. "There's something hidden inside that house, something your grandfather spent decades protecting." Ethan looked back at the crumbling building with entirely different eyes. "What is it?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted, "but several powerful people believe it's worth killing for." The call suddenly disconnected. No signal. At that exact moment, the stranger stopped just a few feet away. He removed his sunglasses, looked Ethan directly in the eyes, and smiled. "I've been searching for you," he said calmly. "But I wasn't expecting to find her with you." His gaze slowly shifted toward Claire. "And she has no idea what she's standing on." Claire looked at Ethan in confusion. "What is he talking about?" Ethan didn't have an answer. Because for the first time in his life, he realized the abandoned house wasn't the test. It was the beginning of a mystery his own family had hidden from him. And whatever lay buried beneath those broken floors had already drawn dangerous people willing to do anything to possess it. The stranger's smile never reached his eyes. Claire instinctively stepped closer to Ethan, her fingers tightening around his hand. She wasn't trembling, but Ethan could feel the tension in her grip. Whoever this man was, he had arrived with purpose. "What do you mean she's standing on something?" Ethan demanded. The stranger glanced toward the abandoned house before looking back at him. "Your grandfather was a brilliant man. He trusted very few people. Unfortunately for him, I was patient enough to discover what he left behind." "You knew my grandfather's?" "I knew of him." The man reached into his jacket. Claire gasped. Ethan immediately moved in front of her. But instead of a weapon, the stranger pulled out an old black-and-white photograph. He tossed it onto the hood of Ethan's car. It showed a much younger version of Ethan's grandfather standing proudly in front of the very same house. Beside him stood 4 other men, all dressed in work clothes, smiling as if they had just completed an important project. On the back of the photograph were 6 handwritten words. "Only truth deserves the final key." Ethan stared at the familiar handwriting. It belonged to his grandfather. Before he could ask another question, the stranger calmly said, "You have until sunrise to find what he hid. If you don't, others far less patient than I am will arrive." "And why are you telling me this?" Ethan asked. The man gave a faint smile. "Because I owe your grandfather a debt I can never repay." Without another word, he turned around, climbed into the SUV and drove away, disappearing into the darkness as mysteriously as he had appeared. Silence settled over the property once again. Claire looked at Ethan. "Do you believe him?" Ethan looked at the old photograph in his hands. "I don't know. But I know one thing. My grandfather never wrote anything without a reason." Claire looked toward the abandoned house. "Then let's find out what he wanted you to discover." Despite the growing danger, there wasn't a trace of hesitation in her voice. Ethan couldn't understand it. Most people would have run. Most people would have demanded answers before taking another step. Claire simply believed they should face the unknown together. They returned to the house, using the flashlight on Ethan's phone to cut through the darkness. Every room was covered in dust, broken furniture, and cobwebs that had been undisturbed for years. The photograph became their only clue. Claire compared every corner of the room to the image. Then something caught her attention. "Ethan!" He looked up. "The fireplace." He walked over. "It looks normal." She shook her head. "No." She held up the old photograph beside the fireplace. In the picture, the bricks above the mantel are arranged differently. Ethan looked carefully. She was right. Someone had rebuilt that section years after the photograph had been taken. His pulse quickened. Together they began removing the loose bricks one by one. After several minutes, Ethan's fingers struck cold metal. Hidden behind the wall was a small iron box covered in rust. There was no keyhole. Only a circular engraving. The same symbol engraved on the signet ring Ethan had inherited from his grandfather years earlier, a ring he almost never wore. He slowly removed the ring from his finger. Claire looked at him. "I think your grandfather knew this day would come." Ethan pressed the ring against the engraved symbol. A loud metallic click echoed through the empty house. The iron box sprang open. Inside wasn't gold. It wasn't jewelry. It wasn't cash. There was only a weathered leather journal. And beneath it, a sealed envelope with Ethan's name written across the front in his grandfather's unmistakable handwriting. He reached for the envelope with shaking hands. Before he could break the seal, the sound of multiple engines roared outside. Bright headlights flooded through the broken windows. This time it wasn't one SUV. It was 6. And they had surrounded the house. The roar of the engines shattered the night silence. Powerful headlights poured through the broken windows, casting long shadows across the dusty floor. Ethan instinctively pulled Claire behind him as tires crunched over gravel outside. "They found us," he whispered. Claire looked toward the front door. "Who are they?" "I don't know." But deep down he feared he already did. He slipped the leather journal and the sealed envelope inside his jacket just as heavy footsteps echoed across the old wooden porch. 1, 2, 3. There were too many to count. The front doorknob slowly turned. The old lock, weakened by decades of neglect, snapped under a single forceful kick. The door burst open. 6 men in black tactical clothing stormed inside, flashlights sweeping across every corner of the house. Standing behind them was a sharply dressed man in his 60s. His silver hair was neatly combed, and his expensive suit looked strangely out of place in the abandoned building. He smiled politely. "Ethan Carter," he said, "I've been looking forward to this meeting." Ethan recognized him instantly. Victor Langford. The billionaire developer his company had defeated for the Harbor Point redevelopment project. Victor slowly removed his leather gloves. "I warned you, there are consequences for taking what belongs to me." It was a fair bid. Victor chuckled. Business has never been fair. His eyes drifted toward Claire. "And you must be the young lady who has complicated everything." Claire met his gaze without flinching. "I'm not afraid of you." Victor laughed softly. "That confidence is admirable." He took another step. "I'll make this simple. Give me whatever you found in this house, and both of you walk away alive." Ethan remained silent. Victor's smile faded. "I'll ask only once." Ethan slowly shook his head. "My grandfather left it for me." "No," Victor replied calmly. "He stole it from my father." The words hung heavily in the air. Ethan frowned. "What are you talking about?" Victor sighed. "For 50 years our families have been fighting over something neither of us created. My father believed your grandfather betrayed him. My grandfather never betrayed anyone." "So you believe?" Victor folded his hands behind his back. "The journal you're hiding contains the truth." Ethan's heart skipped. How did Victor know about the journal? Almost as if reading his thoughts, Victor smiled again. "I've spent 25 years searching for it." Claire leaned closer to Ethan and whispered, "Don't let him see you're carrying anything." Ethan gave the slightest nod. Victor noticed. His expression hardened. "Search them." The 6 men stepped forward. Ethan quickly pulled Claire behind him. "No one touches her." One of the guards grabbed Ethan's shoulder. In one swift motion, Ethan shoved the man backward. The guard stumbled into a rotten wooden beam. A deafening crack echoed through the house. Everyone froze. The ancient floor trembled beneath their feet. Another crack. Then another. Victor looked down. His confident smile vanished. The foundation. Before anyone could move, the wooden floor exploded beneath them. Boards splintered in every direction. The room collapsed into darkness. Ethan instinctively wrapped both arms around Claire as they plunged into the hidden chamber below. Dust filled the air. The screams from Victor's men echoed above them. Then everything became silent. Ethan slowly opened his eyes. He and Claire had landed on a mound of loose earth several feet below the house. Miraculously, neither of them appeared seriously injured. Claire coughed, brushing dust from her face. "Ethan!" He turned on his phone's flashlight. The beam illuminated something neither of them had expected. Stretching beneath the entire house was an enormous underground chamber. Stone walls lined the passage. Ancient wooden shelves filled with weathered boxes stood untouched by time. At the far end of the chamber, directly beneath where the fireplace had once stood, was an enormous steel vault door. Bolted to its center was a bronze plaque engraved with the exact same words written on the back of the old photograph. "Only truth deserves the final key." Ethan and Claire exchanged stunned glances. Whatever his grandfather had hidden, it had never been the journal. The journal was only meant to lead them here. And somewhere above, Victor Langford was already shouting orders to his men. "They're alive. Find another way down." Ethan tightened his grip on Claire's hand as Victor's voice echoed through the shattered floor above. "They can't leave that chamber alive." The sound of boots pounding across the broken house grew louder. Pieces of wood and plaster continued falling from the ceiling, reminding them that the entire structure could collapse at any moment. "We have to move," Claire whispered. Ethan nodded. Using the flashlight on his phone, they cautiously made their way toward the massive steel vault. Every step stirred decades of dust, revealing footprints that had long been hidden. Then Ethan stopped. "Look." Claire lowered her flashlight. There was only one set of footprints leading to the vault. None led away. Someone had entered years ago. But no one had ever come back. A chill ran down Claire's spine. "Ethan, maybe we shouldn't open it." He looked at the bronze plaque again. His grandfather had never been a man driven by greed. He had built his fortune through honesty, often telling Ethan, "A good name is worth more than a full bank account." If he had hidden something beneath this house, it couldn't simply be treasure. It had to be something far more important. Ethan reached into his jacket and pulled out the sealed envelope. His grandfather's handwriting stared back at him. For a moment he hesitated. Then he carefully broke the seal. Inside was a single handwritten letter. "My dear Ethan," it began. "If you are reading this, then life has placed before you the greatest test our family has ever faced. You may believe this vault contains wealth, but wealth has never been what needed protecting." Ethan swallowed hard and continued reading. "Many years ago, 5 friends built their futures together. One of them betrayed the others not by stealing money but by hiding the truth. That lie destroyed families, friendships, and innocent lives for generations." Claire listened in complete silence. "Inside this vault lies every document, confession, contract, and piece of evidence needed to restore the truth. Whoever opens it must choose between protecting the family's reputation or exposing the truth to the world." Ethan lowered the letter. His heart pounded. "So Victor wasn't entirely lying," Claire said quietly. "No. But he wasn't telling the whole truth either." A loud metallic bang echoed through the chamber. Victor's men had found another entrance. "We're running out of time," Claire said. Ethan noticed something engraved beneath the plaque. It wasn't just the words. There was a shallow imprint shaped exactly like the Carter family's signet ring. He removed the ring once more. "You really think this is the key?" "My grandfather planned everything else." He pressed the ring into the imprint. Nothing happened. He frowned. "It doesn't fit." Claire stepped closer. "Wait." She gently turned the ring upside down. "There." On the inside of the ring was a tiny, almost invisible notch. Ethan aligned it with a matching groove in the vault. The ring slid perfectly into place. A series of heavy mechanical clicks echoed through the chamber. The enormous steel door slowly unlocked. Air that had been trapped for decades escaped with a deep hiss. The vault opened only a few inches before stopping. Inside, instead of stacks of gold or priceless jewels, stood a single wooden table. On it rested 5 leather-bound journals, 5 sealed boxes, and 1 antique film projector facing a white wall. Claire looked at Ethan in confusion. "A projector." He stepped closer. Beside it lay a handwritten note. "The truth is not written, it is witnessed." Before Ethan could touch the projector, bright flashlight beams flooded into the chamber behind them. Victor Langford and his men had finally found the underground entrance. Victor smiled as he saw the open vault. "Thank you, Ethan. I've waited 25 years for someone else to unlock that door." He slowly raised a pistol. "And now I'll be taking everything." Victor's finger tightened around the trigger. The chamber fell deathly silent. His men spread out, blocking every possible escape. Their flashlights danced across the stone walls until they settled on Ethan and Claire. "Step away from the vault," Victor ordered. Ethan didn't move. "I said step away." Claire glanced at Ethan. She could see him thinking, weighing every possibility. There was no way they could outrun 6 armed men in the narrow underground chamber. Slowly, Ethan raised his hands. Victor smiled. "Now that's the intelligent billionaire everyone talks about." He motioned for 2 of his men. "Search the vault." The guards cautiously approached the wooden table. One reached for the nearest leather journal. The moment he lifted it, a folded piece of paper slipped onto the floor. Victor frowned. "Read it." The guard unfolded the page. His face immediately turned pale. "What does it say?" Victor demanded. The guard hesitated. It says, if you are reading this, then you are standing beside the man responsible for destroying your own families. Victor's smile disappeared. What nonsense is that? The guard continued reading. Each of the men who served Victor Langford's father was betrayed. Their deaths were blamed on accidents, but the evidence proving who ordered those murders is inside the projector. The chamber became eerily quiet. Several of Victor's own men slowly looked toward him. Victor's voice turned sharp. Throw it away. But the damage had already been done. One of the younger guards frowned. My father worked for your company 30 years ago. Another looked uneasy. So did mine. Victor's jaw tightened. Don't listen to fairy tales written by a dead man. Ethan finally spoke. If it's a lie, why are you afraid of them reading it? Victor glared at him. I'm not afraid. Then let them see what's inside. For the first time since arriving, uncertainty spread among Victor's men. Claire noticed it immediately. They deserve the truth, she said calmly. They've risked their lives for you, don't they have the right to know why? Victor took a threatening step forward. My business is none of their concern. One of the older guards slowly lowered his weapon. Actually, I think it is. Victor turned toward him. What did you say? The guard swallowed. My father disappeared after working for your father. You always told us he abandoned his family. He looked at the journals. If there's evidence in there, I want to know. Another guard nodded. So do I. Within seconds, 3 more men lowered their weapons. Victor's face burned with rage. You ungrateful fools. You work for me. The oldest guard looked him straight in the eye. No. We worked for the man we believed you were. Victor realized he was losing control. Without warning, he swung the pistol toward Ethan. If I can't have what's inside this vault, no one will. A deafening gunshot echoed through the chamber. Claire instinctively threw herself in front of Ethan. The bullet struck a metal support behind them, sending sparks across the room. Before Victor could fire again, one of his own men tackled him from behind. The pistol skidded across the stone floor. Chaos erupted. 2 guards wrestled Victor to the ground while another kicked the weapon out of reach. Within moments, the once powerful billionaire was pinned face down against the cold stone floor by the very men who had followed him only minutes earlier. Victor struggled furiously. You idiots! You've just ruined your futures. The oldest guard calmly picked up the antique film reel from the table. No. He looked directly at Ethan. I think today, we finally get our futures back. Ethan carefully walked to the projector. His grandfather's final note rested beside it. With trembling hands, he read the last sentence aloud. Wealth can build empires, but only truth can preserve them. If you have chosen honesty over inheritance, then you have already become the richest person in this room. Ethan looked at Claire. She smiled through tears. He finally understood. The abandoned house had never been a test of Claire's love. It had been his grandfather's final test of Ethan's character. Money had brought him to the house. Love had kept him there. But choosing truth over power had fulfilled the legacy his grandfather had spent a lifetime protecting. Months later, the evidence contained in the journals and film exposed decades of corruption, cleared the names of innocent families, and brought long overdue justice. Victor Langford was convicted for his own crimes and those he had helped conceal, while the hidden documents restored reputations that had been destroyed for generations. As for Ethan, he publicly donated the abandoned property to be restored as a museum dedicated to integrity, remembrance, and reconciliation, ensuring that the truth buried beneath its floors would never again be forgotten. On the day the restoration was completed, he returned to the front porch with Claire. This time, the house was alive with laughter instead of silence. Fresh flowers lined the walkway. Children played in the yard. Sunlight poured through windows that had once been broken. Ethan reached into his pocket, not for a fortune, not for a key, but for a small velvet box. He knelt before the woman who had chosen him when she believed he had nothing. Claire, he said, his voice trembling with gratitude, you proved that love isn't measured by what we own but by what we're willing to build together. Will you marry me? With tears of joy streaming down her face, she smiled the same smile she had worn the day she first saw the abandoned house. Yes, she whispered, 1,000 times yes. As friends, family, and the descendants of those whose lives had been restored by the truth applauded around them, Ethan realized his grandfather had left him a far greater inheritance than billions of dollars. He had left him the courage to choose truth, the wisdom to recognize genuine love, and the reminder that the strongest foundations are built not on wealth but on honesty. And that was a legacy no one could ever steal.